So hello everyone, welcome back to Project Wood with another project. In this episode we're going to be making a simple wall clock, or you can also adjust it, I suppose, to sit on a desk if you wish. It's a very simple clock. The marking out will only take a few minutes, with 4 simple joints and a few holes to mark out. The only real specialist piece of equipment you have to get separate to the kit is the actual clock hands, or I can source these for people if they really need. So I'd be delighted if people would subscribe to the YouTube channel there, Project Wood. Numbers have grown this week, but I'm hoping to build that into a bigger audience so I can bring the woodwork classroom to the world. I've been teaching woodwork to secondary schools for about 20 years, and I think there's a big appetite out there for people who have left school who always wanted to do woodwork. So that's the whole aim of the channel. So for this project, you can see there's not much timber in it, just the clock movement obviously. Just the back of the clock, which is 180 by 180 by 15 millimeters. We have 4 sides which are all equal. They are 305 millimeters by 44 by 30. There's some dowel as well. There's some 9mm dowel, about 120 mil of that. And then we've got some 6mm dowel, 260 millimeters. So this dowel is pretty much going to be used to suspend the clock in the frame. It's going to look like it's floating in there. And this dowel is going to be used to mark our 12, 3, 6 and 9 o'clock positions on the clock. Then we have our sides and the clock back, as I said. So we'll start off with marking the clock part itself. So we'll put the sides just away here. So obviously we want the clock to be right in the center of the frame. So again, I'm going to mark this using pen so that it's much more visible on the video. But I recommend that you use 2H or 5H pencil. I've kind of gone to using 5H in woodwork at the moment. It's much easier to rub out. So we'll join corner to corner just to find the center. Again, we don't have to mark the entire piece, just enough to locate the center for us. So that will mark the position of the center of the clock movement itself. So we'll need to drill a pilot hole through here, and then probably 9 or 10 millimeter hole to take the shank of the clock movement. Okay, so we look at the wood. This side has a cleaner finish on it, got some kerping or some scrubbing here from the saw itself. So this side will be the front of the clock when we're finished. So on the back then we need to also mark out a rectangle or square shape for the box movement itself. Because the wood is not that thick, we're only going to have to chisel down probably 2 or 3 millimeters. It won't take a whole lot of chiseling, just to remove some wood here to allow the clock to sit into. So this clock movement is 60 millimeters by 60 millimeters. So we need to mark 60 millimeter square in the center of the back piece. So just set up a cross here as a guide. Again, with a light pencil, you won't have much rubbing out to do with this. So we'll go 30 millimeters either side of the middle. And just use our tri-square to square that up. Okay, so we'll be removing all that material. You can put X's in there or any symbol you like really. just to mark the waist. And we'll have a lovely painstaking job of chiseling that out, but only about 2 or 3 millimeters, so it won't be so bad. Now on the edges, we also need to find the center so that we can locate the position for our dowels to make it look like it's floating in the frame. So that's just very simply a matter of marking some X's as well. Might be easier to hold that in the vise if you wish. So that will give us the position there for 6 millimeter dowel bit. Need to repeat that on all 4 sides. It's probably easier just to video this standing up, but it would be a lot easier just to hold it in your woodwork vise, and probably a little bit more accurate. Do one more to do. Okay, so that's basically all the marking out for the clock back. We will have to mark the position of our 9 o'clock, 3 and 6, etc. We can do that later on, probably when we have the clock piece fitted itself. So we'll leave that onto the video where I'll be cutting this out. Okay, so that's the clock, pretty easy. You can put that to one side. We won't cut any of the dowel yet. We'll leave that until we're actually putting the dowel into the project itself. Now for the frame, it's 4 pieces of material for the frame. 44 by 30 material. All of these will need a face side and face edge. We want to make sure that we keep the face edge facing inwards on all the pieces. People often ask, how do you know which side to pick, face side and face edge? Well, just pick the ones that look the best. You might like some knots on the surface, some people don't. Just depends on what you're making, really. Okay, now we're also going to number all those pieces so that they match up. So number 1 will join to number 1 over here. 2 and 2. This is very important for when you go to fit the joints, that you're not fitting number 3 to number 3, and then once you remove a little bit of material, you're suddenly trying to fit number 3 to number 4. You're always trying to keep them together. That's roughly the frame layout. So 2 of these will be male, so perhaps piece 2 and 3 will have male on the bottom here, male tenon, and we'll do the same for 1 and 4, and then we can come back and mark out the female mortises on the other 2 pieces. So 2 of these are going to be absolutely identical. They have, just zoom in a little bit, 1 centimeter waist each end. So all these 4 sides have 1 millimeter or 1 centimeter waist. Both of these are going to be identical, so I'll just mark one for the video and then you can go ahead and mark the other one. So again, tri-square goes in against the face edge. Tri-square only ever goes face side or face edge. This helps the lines to mark up and match up on the other side. If your lines don't meet when you go around, it just means you didn't keep the brass part of the tri-square touched against the face side or the face edge. And just complete that around to the side. Again, we just put X's on our waist for clarity. We want to make sure we know what we're taking off and what we're leaving behind. Some people prefer to shade this in or put squiggles in, it doesn't really matter. That's our first piece there. Now, these are going to join. You have a couple of choices really. Let's take number 3 here. So with the kit, we're kind of hoping that, I suppose, we join them with the 30mm, the narrow part of the wood facing out towards where people are looking at the clock. You could alter it yourself and have them on the flat like that. But for this one, I'm going to go with the 30mm edge facing outwards. We're going to need to mark the thickness of the timber, which is 30mm, but we don't use a ruler, we'll just line it up. This will give you a much more accurate joint actually. Bring that all the way around. My dog always gets excited during these videos. Okay, so there we have 1 centimeter line and then our 3 centimeter line all the way around. Show that up close up. Okay, next up, so we're going to use bridle joints on this particular project. So we need to divide the edge here into 3 equal parts. So the wood is just shy of 45mm, so that'll be coming in 15mm from both sides. I believe 14mm or 15mm, just depends. The wood can swell up on pretty damp days, which we have here today, or it can shrink on warm summer days, so you just have to do your best with that. So we'll do the same over here. 15. We also will be marking the females off these males after they have been cut, so that actually takes away the problem of the wood being a little bit off size on any particular day. Okay, so just zoom in on that there, you can see we're going to keep this middle section here, as these are the males. So we'll put some X's on there. Do the same on the other side. And these will be brought all the way around to the back. So all that's coming off. All that. All this side. We bring those lines up over the end grain and drop them down over the back. Okay, so we're going to keep all this middle piece. It can be difficult to get the X's onto the end grain. But that is basically our male joint marked out. Same for the other end. So you repeat that for the other side. Two pieces are identical. We try and keep all the males on two pieces and the females on two pieces as well. Okay, so that's one complete mark out. I'll repeat that for the piece of wood that has number 1 and number 4 written on it. Then it's just a simple matter of sawing those out. So it's quite a simple joint. So I'll go ahead and repeat that now for 1 and 4, and we'll come back for a short chat then before we go to the make video. So that's our male joints fully marked out. Some more marks on the waist here. So as you can see, we're just going to keep the tenon in the center here. And that's fully seated. We'll be setting up this direction here. We'll keep the face side on the inside. Okay, so we can go ahead and mark the 1 centimeter waist on the females. We can also mark back the 30 millimeter line, and then we'll get to applying the male markings onto the female side. Just leave the male aside for a moment. 1 centimetre each end. We can do a double marking here where we keep the wood level. And just use the one measurement to carry across the both pieces because they're absolutely identical anyway. We can mark the thickness of the timber onto one of them. Same this side. And we bring those across again. So we'll just bring those all the way around. So I'm just going to show you now how to mark out corner number 1, and then you can repeat that for the other 3 corners. Again, using face side and face edge, and these lines will match up perfect when we come across. Again, it's a lot more accurate with a pencil. And when you're making your kit, you don't have to go as fast as this. You can pause the video at any stage if you need. Okay, so we'll have a look at corner 1, just marking up the female, and then the other 3 are identical, so we won't put them in the video. So I've got male number 1 up here. On the bottom. So I'm trying to keep the face edge up towards me. With the face side symbol facing inwards. So that's them all in the correct location. It would be useful to write in the number here again. We just want to be always sure that we're matching the same corner to the same corner. Number 3 and number 3, 4 and 4. So we'll just focus in here on corner number 1. And we want to match the lines coming from the male and get them to line up with the female lines. You could measure with your ruler again, but again, this way is fine. We'll bring that all the way around. Now these will be the reverse, so we're going to remove the middle piece here, and not the outsides that we did with the males. So you can see there the difference. This will be removed and this will slot in here. Basically all woodwork joints are a situation where one piece give it and the other take it. So you'll have mortise and tenons and dovetail pins. They all have what we call male and female components. Okay, so same here, we'll be removing the center piece. And our waist later on. Waist always comes off at the very last minute. Sometimes you have to remove it to help, but in most joints it comes off last. Okay, so that's most of the marking out. There's a little bit of marking out to do for drilling when we get to the making video. But for now, I'm going to scribe all the joints and finish marking out the rest. Just remember with scribing, let's take the female one here. If you're scribing, don't go so deep when you're going in the same direction as the grain. So the grain on the wood here is basically following the lines. So when I'm pushing my chisel in, I don't want to push too hard when the chisel is in the same direction where you could split the wood, especially if your chisel is nice and sharp, which it should be always. Okay. For going across the grain, you can press down a little bit harder. There's no risk of splitting the wood. You should hear a nice crunching sound, which tells you that the grain is getting torn, and you'll get a lovely clean finish on your joints. Very often with students, the difference between high-end student and an average student is that they don't scribe their joints, and they wonder what happened. Here's your lovely clean edges on all your joints. That would be scribing for the female. For the male then, we're just on the outside. Again, don't press too hard when with the grain. I always try to keep the angles on the chisel facing towards the X's. Again, we repeat that for all the other sides. And then we're good to go with the cutting out and drilling. Okay, so hope you've enjoyed that there. Since it's quite a short video, I'm just going to go straight into the making in a moment, rather than doing two separate videos. So it's worth rewinding and pausing there if you're making this, and join us then in the next part for the cutting out and assembly of our lovely wall clock. Okay, so we're going to have a look at removing 2 or 3 millimeters of material here for the clock back to sit in. So it's important at this stage to drill your pilot hole all the way through so that we don't lose its position. Let's get our battery there. So I've got a 2.5 millimeter pilot hole bit, and just support it up on the wood that we have. So that marks on the front of the clock the position of the center if we need it. Again, at this point you can also drill a 10mm hole for the shank to go through if you wished. So I think we'll get that done and out of the way. As always with drilling, you want to drill in halfway from one side and halfway from the other to get a clean finish, which is not so important on this particular project, but on most of them it is, as we're going to be removing the back here anyway. So I want to finish that hole from the front to make sure I maintain that lovely clean finish. So that marks the position now in the final hole for the shank of the clock to come through. Just remove all the pieces here. There's many different types of clock movements you could probably get to put in the centre of this. It's your own personal choice. I find these kits are good. So we leave rubber washer on the back. Okay, so I can see that the brass threaded part is not showing through on edge. And taking a rough guess at that, it's probably 2-3 millimeters more that we need to come up. We also need to allow for the washer and the bolt. So we might even take it down to 0.5 centimeter, 4 millimeters even, and see how we go then. So chiseling out then is like taking out any mortise. It's a slow process. Take your widest chisel. We've got a 25mm 1-inch chisel here. And we need to be very, very aware of the grain here. This is laminate wood, so it will split very easily. If it does, don't worry about it. Put some wood glue on it and just clamp it overnight. There's always the risk of it splitting, but to help that, if we turn the grain, say, facing away from us, and then the chisel is at 90 degrees to that, we can be pretty much sure that we'll be able to chisel it out without any trouble. I've already scribed all around the edges, so now it's just a matter of going down the 4 millimeters we need. So we can mark 4 millimeters on the back of the chisel, which will actually help in determining the depth. Might even go 5 just to be absolutely sure that we get enough clearance for the washer on the front. Just mark that with a pencil. Okay, so we know now from that chisel, if we reach that mark on the chisel there, that we have the correct depth. So bit by bit, we're going to tap down, probably remove 1 millimeter or 2 millimeters at a time. Coming back 3 or 4 millimeters every time. If you have the luxury of a mortise machine at home, you could use that. So we'll just take out 1/4 here and then we'll let you away to do the rest. As it's just the same process all the way. It's a lot faster process than you think. Keeping your chisels razor sharp the whole time. So I'll just do the half perhaps here since we're almost all the way across. Make sure we get well down on the edges. So with a very sharp chisel, this will literally remove itself. The fact that we have it scribed around the edges will help you get a nice clean finish there as well. So chisel on the back of the hand, just pop those off. That's already down easily 2 millimeters, nearly 3 millimeters. Take your time here. Make sure the wood is scribed on the outside. If you remember, scribing is just marking all the way around with your chisel. Yeah, so that's about 2 mil. So I'll repeat that then for the other half. And I'll go down another 2.5, 3 millimeters to get to the bottom depth. So I'll work away on that and we'll come back when that's done. the second layer next. So we'll try and get down to our 4mm here. So we just want to flatten the bottom of that off as best as we can. Always keep your 2 hands behind the cutting edge of the chisel in case it slips. Okay, so just go around the edge with our chisel then, clean that all off. And we'll check for a fit then for the clock. So I'm down about 3.5, 4mm. May need to go a little bit more. So just really cleaning the edges here. Clean that as much as possible. Now we'll bring in the clock movement and just see how we are for depth here. Remember, we're looking to get the shank. Looking to get the shank of the that's the threaded shank of the clock movement all the way through.